Welcome to The Record. I'm Mark Maxwell. This week on The Record, Missouri Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, St. Louis Alderwoman Cara Spencer, and Board of Aldermen candidate Daniela Velazquez. They'll all be joining us in just a moment. First, the 2024 primary race for governor appears to be taking shape in its early stages, the infancy so far. State Senator Bill Eigel wants the job, and he's started launching digital attack ads taking aim at Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft and at Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe.
We have time for
what
one
kind
more.
of a governor would Mike Kehoe make?
He'd be good. I mean, I put him a lieutenant governor. I got confidence in him to be a statewide candidate. And, you know, every person I did that I put in a statewide position, 5 of them, which has never been done before in our state's history, but all of them have got a pretty good proven track record of moving forward. So we'll see how that goes up. You know, we'll let the election, let the people decide that.
But, are you going to endorse him?
All right, let's
go. Yeah, I'm simple on that.
And Missouri's Secretary of State, Jay Ashcroft, joins us on the record now. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Not quite a full endorsement from Governor Parson for his Lieutenant Governor, Mike Kehoe there. What kind of a governor do you think Mike Kehoe would make?
You know, I think that the people of the state will make a great decision, and if they choose Mike Kehoe, I think he'll lead the state in a good direction.
Are you hoping they'll choose you instead?
You know, I'm just going to trust the people of the state. Right now, I'm focused on doing a good job for them. I have a full-time job working on legislation. I'm going to do what needs to be done, and we'll see what happens.
You haven't officially declared that you're running for governor yet. A lot of people think that you might be, and the consultants seem to be lining up in that direction and all of that. You want to break any news on the program here?
I don't. I think it's more important that we have elected officials that are worried about their current job than they are about their next job.
You talked about the legislation you're working on. You're supporting right now a bill that would restrict foreign businesses or persons from owning more than 1/2 of 1% of all the acreage, all the farmland in Missouri. Right now, foreign companies can buy up to 1% of all the farmland in Missouri. Most Republicans supported that plan when it passed, including Lieutenant Governor Kehoe. Where were you on the record? Were you vocally opposing this at the time?
I wasn't an elected official at the time.
No, but you have opinions.
That was in 2013, so I was working as an attorney, and I have to admit, I probably didn't even know when they took that vote at the time.
When did it occur to you, wait a minute, this might be a threat, China might be a threat?
You know, the biggest turning point for me, I think we've seen that China is becoming more and more of a threat, but during COVID, when we saw that there were grocery store shelves that were running out of meat, and we saw meat that was being shipped overseas, it seems, you know, I think China really shipped COVID here by allowing travel to the United States, but not within their country, and they shipped our meat and our food to China. That's a problem.
You called for, recently when the House was being sworn in this new legislative session, you spoke, you delivered a speech before the House there, and you called for a constitutional amendment that would require voters to approve any general tax increase. But the voters elect legislators to make those decisions. Why would a legislator, why would a legislator tie their own hands?
I'm not sure the legislators will. I think the only way they'll do that is if the people get active and get involved. But I think if you ask the random person on the street, they'll tell you they don't think their legislators are doing the right job and that Missouri isn't doing as well as it could be doing.
Lieutenant Governor Kehoe sponsored a sales tax increase in 2014 that would have gone to fund roads and bridges. Would you have voted for that?
No, we didn't need that. I was one of the main vocal proponents against the gas tax that just came up a couple of years ago. We had $2 billion sitting in the bank. We didn't know what to do with it. I said there's no reason to raise taxes when we have money. We don't know how to spend it. Now we raise those taxes and we have an even greater surplus. We need to let the people be in control of how their money is spent.
All right, we're talking public dollars. Let's talk private dollars for a minute. Has Wall Street gone woke?
I think there are a lot of concerns that investors are being misled about what's being done with their dollars. We put out an anti-ESG rule, which is really not anti-ESG, it's anti-fraud. We believe an investment advisor should let you know what your investments are going to, and if they're making it advice, it should be for the best financial return.
This is like the newest buzzword on Capitol Hill as Republicans look for ways to beat up President Biden, his Labor Department, about ESG, that acronym for folks who might not know at home, for environmental, social, and corporate governance principles, ESG. Back to that bill you were talking about, that you called it anti-ESG or anti-fraud. I want to dig into the specifics there.
Yep.
You recently said in that press release that financial advisors should be, quote, purely focused on generating profit for their clients. Should they also focus on avoiding risk in their client's portfolio?
What I think they should do is they should be responsive to their client. And under that rule that we put out and under the legislation, if the client wants them to take into account ESG in some way, they're allowed to do that. But they shouldn't mislead them. People expect when they go to an advisor, they're going to advise them on the best return. We just want to make sure people know what they're getting.
A lot of big corporate investors, big money managers for 20 years have talked about investing with a conscience, investing in things that are sustainable. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that if they disclose that to the individual they're selling the security to. It's about the people knowing what they're buying and making their own informed decision.
In investment decisions, you're often looking not just for profit alone, but also in avoiding risk. Investments always take on some risk. That's part of the game. It's part of the disclosure that you read. Some investors are more comfortable with risk. Some are less. They're more risk averse. Is there no risk at all in fossil fuels?
I think there's risk in every possible investment, and because of that, because of the differences in risks and the differences in risk tolerances, every investment advisor has to talk to their client to figure out what sort of risk they want to have and get their approval. They should do the same thing for social goals.
You'd agree, though, that the First Amendment provides people with their right to freely speak, to freely spend, and to freely associate with companies or ideas they believe in, right?
Yes, if they want to do that, they may.
Why would the government put up stop signs in front of that?
All we're doing is making sure, as has been done for longer than I've been alive, we're requiring people that are selling you an investment to disclose what exactly they're doing, what exactly you're buying,
like a warning
and why
label.
they're giving it to you. It's just like we do on anything else.
Like a warning label?
I think people ought to be told the truth. Do you think they should be lied to?
Well, no, of course not.
Well, we don't want people being misled. We believe that it's a material fact whether or not you're suggesting an investment because you think it will get the best financial return or because you want to get your client to invest in something that you support when they may not.
Your press release said that some of these different issues around ESG are non-pecuniary. You want to offer a definition?
Well, the idea there is you may invest in something and you don't want to get the best return financially because you're trying to do something. You could have people, it's ESG, you could have people that want to do an investment that'll give them some return, but part of the money will go to their church or some faith that they believe in. That's fine. We just believe that the investor should make that decision and that they should be fully informed when they make that.
But if someone's investing in a cleaner environment, less pollution, I don't know that it's non-pecuniary, really, is it? I mean, you can quantify the harm. That who measures risk are global reinsurance companies. The second largest global reinsurance company on the planet measured the risk of fossil fuels. They said that the world stands to lose around 10% of the total economic value because of the effects of climate change. We're talking a massive global recession. One more study from Harvard, in fact, found that more than 8 million people died in 2018 alone from fossil fuel pollution. So it seems you can quantify.
And I believe that people should be able to make their own individual decision. If they want to go with that sort of a study, they're allowed to do that. If they want to disagree with it and make sure their money is invested differently, that should be their decision.
I'm picking on that word non-pecuniary. I don't know that.
Well, that was for financial return.
Right. Well, there's a financial impact on 8 million people dying.
But that's not the financial impact to the investor. And those numbers are very hypothetical, and
you would call them into question.
Yes, politely.
Politely, I see. What is this larger? Is it a political push? This woke ideology is this new buzzword we hear in Republican political circles. There's like a...
Well, no, we're hearing that ideology coming from Democrats that are trying to impose that on other people.
Impose.
It's not a new thing that our office has tried to push back and make sure that the people of Missouri would know what they're investing in. We've been pushing back at the national level when we've been writing letters to the organizations involved in the securities industry to say this is what we think should be done to make sure that the people of the state have disclosure.
I guess, so you used the word fraud early on in this. Do you think there are real victims here? Do you think there are people, investors in the state of Missouri who are right now being hoodwinked?
If you are investing your money so that you can have a big anniversary in 20 years or something and you're expecting the best financial return and instead you're getting half of that return so your money can be invested in something that your investment advisor likes, Yes, that's fraudulent. That's been the law. It's a material fact. It needs to be disclosed.
And that's a problem that exists that brought you to this solution.
Anytime a material fact is not disclosed, that is fraudulent per the law, has been the law. We want to make sure not only if it is happening that it stops, but that it doesn't happen in the future.
I see. And you talked about, I want to go back to that tax amendment earlier.
Yeah.
Missouri has a graduated income tax structure, technically, does it?
Yes.
Senator Josh Hawley has said that the Missouri Republican Party and Republicans more broadly need to focus more on the middle class, the working class, people who are trying to just create a little more breathing room in their budgets. Would you support the exploration of an idea to cut taxes for people who are in the middle class in that graduated structure?
I want to cut taxes for everybody. I don't want to pick winners and losers. I don't want to pit some people against other people. I believe government is about serving all people, and I want the lowest possible tax burden on all Missourians.
Well, do you prefer a flat tax in essence, or a one that is that doesn't take so much of the disposable income from a person in the working class?
I'm happy to push for any change in taxes that will lower the tax burden on all Missourians. I don't care if you do that through the income tax. I don't care if you do that through sales tax. I want the people of Missouri to have more of their own money to spend.
Secretary Ashcroft, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Speaking of breathing room in the budget, Governor Mike Parson stopped by St. Louis earlier today to sign into law a pay increase for all state workers in Missouri. It's perhaps the most transformational upheaval of power at City Hall that we've seen in modern history in St. Louis, especially if you consider the corruption scandal that rocked City Hall last year, now with ward reduction and only 14 members of the Board of Aldermen taking the oath of office after the upcoming election. When you combine all of that, there is a lot of change happening at City Hall. Joining us now to help dig into and analyze some of that is current Alderwoman Cara Spencer. She is now on the record. It's good to have you with us, running for re-election in this newly drawn 8th Ward.
That's right. Thanks for having me today.
It's good to have you with us. When you look at this upcoming change on the horizon, how do you, I mean, for example, just the Charter Commission itself, there's a chance to rewrite basically the foundation or the constitution of the city. What's the potential there?
Well, there's a couple of things that we're talking about here. One, the reduction of the Board of Aldermen, which I think is an enormous opportunity for the city of St. Louis. Reducing the number of folks down there really can, streamline city government. It can help us spend less time fighting, more time legislating, and getting more serious about the job of running the city of St. Louis.
Easier to ram something through with fewer people to oppose it.
Well, easier to get consensus. Right now
we say the same thing differently.
Well, we're often accused of having fiefdoms, and I think there's a lot to be said there. There really is a lot of power in each alderman's position, but the disbursement of power among 28 of us really kind of just scattershots it all around, and kind of streamlining it down to 14, I think, can really help us streamline some of those decisions that we make down there.
The mayor has an ally in Board of Aldermen President Megan Green. Mm-hmm. Do you worry that consolidating power like that gives the mayor more power over the board?
Well, look, I think we ought to have checks and balances. The Board of Aldermen is the legislative branch of city government, and I think it really should be an autonomous check and balance on the administrative aspect of city government, the mayor's office.
But there are 18 standing committees now, or 16?
We're going to have to revisit that, because we're going to have, with only 14 potential chairs.
We have more committees than members.
That's exactly right. So there'll be some jockeying around once the voters decide who's going to go down there. We'll have to figure out how the board is really structured, and that's an enormous opportunity in and of itself. The Charter Commission, which you mentioned, is a separate opportunity to really re-envision how our government is structured from a power perspective, and that's a really, really important opportunity for the public to weigh in on.
I just got back from Detroit at the start of the last month when we were looking at some of the things working well in that city's comeback, and they had just recently rewritten their city charter. Mm-hmm. One of the things that they added, there's a number of things, but one I'll point out is that when we first got off the plane and walked into City Hall on a Monday night, it was packed. And at the center was this guy. I thought I recognized him. Turned out it was the mayor. Mm-hmm. And he was fielding all kinds of questions, hearing all kinds of problems from his voters directly. Turns out they wrote that into the city charter 8 times a year, roughly every 6 weeks or so. The executive of the city, the mayor, has to sit there and directly meet with voters. Do you see value in that?
I see enormous value in that. Look, I put my cell phone number on everything I put out, and I get calls every single day from people. And it's really, really helpful to hear not just with the folks that are on social media or that are out there at neighborhood association meetings, but are living their daily lives in our communities, what they're experiencing, what they think, what they feel, and what they're seeing, and what they see as the solutions to problems is enormously helpful in governing.
Politics is always a factor in these elections, and Mayor Jones has been rather involved. I don't know there's ever been a time when a mayor has endorsed in nearly half of all the aldermanic races. She's endorsed in 6 races. One of them was in your race, but she's endorsing your opponent, Shedrick Kelly. You're also up against Ken Ortman. Were you hoping for her endorsement?
Well, I think it's important to work with the mayor, and I have been doing that to the best of my ability, given the fact that I ran against her just 2 years ago. And I did seek that out. I was disappointed that she decided to get involved in the race, but hey, it's politics, and I feel good about the voters in the 8th Ward making their own decision.
We're at the halfway point, nearly, of Tashara Jones' first term in office. How's she doing?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Look, the city has a lot of challenges right now. We are at a very critical point for our city. We have been losing population and businesses downtown 4 years now, and that loss is getting even greater right now. We've lost 15,000 people in just the last 2 years, and this is a hemorrhaging of our tax base and our community that the city we really can't survive through. So we've got to turn some of that around, and we've got to start delivering better city services to the taxpayers that really, frankly, deserve them.
I was in the room when Mayor Jones last week called for Kim Gardner to take accountability and to do some serious soul searching and decide if she wanted to remain the city's prosecutor. Without getting into conjecture here, just my read on her body language, and it looked difficult for her to make a statement like that. It was a public rift, a public split. I think she knew those were high stakes in making a claim like that. Mm-hmm. What did you see? Was that a necessary step for the mayor to take?
I can't speak for the mayor, but I can speak for my constituency and for people in the city of St. Louis, victims of very, very violent crime. And, justice is incredibly important to families of victims, and we're not delivering justice in the reliable manner that our victims deserve. And so I think we really need to revisit that. I called on the circuit attorney to consider stepping aside and having some additional support there so that we can deliver the justice that our victims deserve.
What does that look like, though? Because right now, under current law, if she steps aside, the Republican governor appoints a replacement.
Yeah,
do you think the voters of St. Louis would be satisfied with that?
That's a very complicated set of, we have a very complicated set of facts right now. I think we need some help within the circuit attorney's office. There's a myriad of ways we can do that, but it's clear that we're not delivering the justice that our families, quite frankly, deserve right now. And so bringing in some additional resources, I think, is key to moving through the rest of this term. Real
quick, a few questions about ward politics and the future of the Board of Aldermen. Mayor Jones wants to split up and carve up the way ward capital funds. Each member gets about $300,000. I suppose that would balloon to $600,000 or $700,000 a year under the new wards to use on improvements and upgrades in each of their wards. She says some of these wards have fewer people but more geography, longer roads, and so we need to change this. We need to make it more equitable. That measure failed at the Board of Aldermen when it came up, but they're back at it. They want to do it again. A lot of members aren't going to want to just give up money in their ward. Where do you fall?
Look, I stand firmly that we need an infrastructure long-term plan. And the ward capital is a significant amount of money, but it's for everything from roads and bridges to parks to sidewalks and dumpster replacement. So really, it's a very small amount of money at the end of the day for what our neighborhoods need. What I want to see us do is look to other pots of money that we are generating, particularly the money that we generate on our roads, our parking revenue, which is very significant, and put that money into the infrastructure that we need to make our cities, our communities safer for pedestrians, for cyclists, and for motorists.
And pardon the question, I should know this, but that money now from parking revenue goes into general revenue? Or?
No, it does not. We are the only city in the nation, to my knowledge, that does not put its parking revenue into the general fund. We have an enterprise fund set up. It's a separate entity. an anomaly in the United States in that manner, and it needs to frankly break down, because we need a real source of funds long term to invest in, not just 2-year investment, injection of capital, but a long-term paving and restructuring plan for our city's infrastructure.
There is no bigger pot of money, or a few pots of money that are larger than the Rams settlement money, which is still yet to be spent. The Board of Aldermen have already spent their way through all of the American Rescue Plan Act funds, those federal pandemic relief funds. At the time, when you were running for mayor, you called that tranche of money something that could bring generational change. I think you said even a historic change that could change the course of the city's history. What potential do you see with this Rams settlement money, and where would you like to see that money go?
Well, I really want to see that Rams money spent now. I want to see exactly. You know, I think
on what?
Well, we have an enormous challenges downtown in North St. Louis. I want to see that money be put in to our communities in a transformational way. I want to see us promote and establish home ownership models. I want to see us solidify some of the infrastructure we need to spur development. And
what does that look like, a loan, or does it look like a...
Well, one of the things I really pushed for in the mayor's race was stabilizing our housing, especially the city-owned parcels. Investing in them not only gets people into those houses, it increases our population, it increases our tax base, and it promotes the long-term viability of our historic housing stock here in the city of St. Louis.
All right, Alderwoman Cara Spencer, we could go on, but we have to leave it there for now. Thank you for joining us. Mayor Jones just recently signed this last wave of the American Rescue Plan Act funds, spending $74 million, with roughly $46 million of it going toward commuter safety, pedestrian safety, and driver safety out on the roads. We caught up with her at a press conference on Wednesday earlier this week, where she signed that into law.
We need to do more to hold reckless drivers accountable. How can we teach our teenagers how to drive in a city where the rules of the road feel more like suggestions? They're tragic reminders to all St. Louis drivers. Slow down, obey the rules of the road, or it may cost you your life.
We're joined now by an aldermanic candidate, Daniela Velazquez, who was running against our guest last week, Jennifer Florida, with the big vote coming up on Tuesday. Thanks for joining us on the record.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to hear some sound there from Mayor Jones about this new $40 million, $46 million investment in roads and sidewalks and commuter safety. Well, the Board of Aldermen has already kind of spent all that money. Is there anything more you can do, should you be elected, to make streets, sidewalks, commuting St. Louis safer?
Sure, there's a lot more we can do. I mean, one is looking at the street study to see what all the information we get back from the study to see where these things need to change. Obviously, we know we've seen some terrible, heartbreaking things in the past week or so with areas that need to have a different public safety plan to be more to be safer for the roads.
All these things happen, so it's like a public outrage to see this suffering at such a large scale, and yet the studies you're referring to date back years. Do you get a sense that there's urgency at City Hall to make the city safer now?
I think so, and I think that this next board has a sense of urgency. I have a sense of urgency. So you just asked, what are things that we could do now? Well, yes, it will take time to build roads, but we have traffic laws for a reason, and they need to be enforced. So there's part of that. There are solutions that we can do now. One of the other recommendations, and something I would like to work on at the board, is finding different ways to have automated traffic enforcement.
Red light cameras.
Well, ones that are constitutional.
How do you thread that needle? Because they already took those away.
Well, and that's something I think we'll have to explore. So there has to be a balance between obviously protecting people's privacy, but then if there's a solution to look at that, I think that's something the board should look into. And then beefing up supporting the traffic enforcement where we can.
Is part of it a technological improvement? If I understand correctly, the old system was, well, we couldn't really identify who's behind the wheel. Cameras are a lot better now than they were back then.
Right, and I think with the new iteration is how do we protect people's privacy as well? So we didn't know who to identify with, and we don't want, again, and there's been the issue of surveillance in the city in general that, we don't want to over surveil people, but if we do use these cameras, how can we do it responsibly, protecting people's civil rights, but then also have accountability for drivers on the roads that are not following the laws.
You had some background with the ACLU. We just got back from Detroit, where they're using a real-time crime center to great effect. St. Louis has one too. Do you want to see it go away? Do you want to see it change in some way, the way the police use surveillance footage?
So I think surveillance footage, if used, has to be used responsibly. And that's both something I think that people across the aisle can see. So
Would you restrain it in any way?
well, we need policies to manage the data, how long it's stored, where it's stored. I mean, that's a protection for, both crime victims and frankly, if law enforcement is investigating, we just need to have parameters around it. And those need to be set up front, protect people.
The tip of the enforcement spear are, of course, law enforcement officers, police, but right behind that is the prosecutor. Kim Gardner told the public that she still has broad public support. She was voted and elected into office with some 70% roughly of the electorate. So we asked Mayor Jones what she saw in her answer. We have that clip here. You called for the prosecutor to take some accountability. After that, she met the press and defended herself, pointing to her electability. She said she was politically popular and pointed to her political base of support in St. Louis. If her election was held today, could you vote for her?
Well, that's a tough question. Well, her election's not today, and what we're doing in the interim is trying to make sure that we're pulling all of the pieces together and pulling all of the people that are involved in our criminal justice system to the table. I think everyone can agree that our criminal justice system needs improvement and is broken.
There's part of the response from Mayor Jones there. I know you're running in just one ward, so you don't want to alienate voters. You want as many voters as possible. But I'm going to ask you that same question. Could you vote for Kim Gardner today?
I hope that somebody steps up and runs.
You think it'd be healthy to see her face a challenge?
But yes, but here's the thing too. When people talk about this issue, they're talking about it from a very, we're talking about it in a very polarized perspective. I think the question of voters and the question of the public is if the state has not shown that they have St. Louis's best interest in mind.
Sure.
So if the governor, we didn't vote, we don't want Jefferson City making decisions for us, and in the past when St. Louis has asked for things from the state, that's what's come up. So I think that is the real issue, is what kind of repercussions could happen if things change now.
You mentioned the polarized moment we're in. Certainly there are political reactions, but there are real world consequences too. And it strikes me, part of the job of a prosecutor is to cool those passions, is to execute justice so that there isn't the backlash or outrage. How responsible is Kim Gardner for the polarizing moment that we're in? How much of that tension did she create?
Sure, I think everybody can agree that what we're doing in the moment we're in, what we're doing is not working now. And what happened to Janae Edmondson was heartbreaking, beyond heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. And that public safety is an issue for people in the city, it's an issue for people in the region, and that's something that we have to look at collectively and collaborating. I think this is also an opportunity to take a look at our criminal justice system, because right now we are focused on the prosecutor, but it's also a chance for us to explore what role the judges play, what role law enforcement has, and us all collaboratively need something to change and shift.
We asked your opponent last week when she was here, how come she didn't get Mayor Jones' endorsement? You did. The mayor's endorsing you. I don't know that I've ever seen a mayor so involved in almost half of the ward races in a local. What's going on here? Is the mayor are you gonna be a rubber stamp for the mayor if you get elected?
No, definitely not. But I do agree with the mayor's vision and to the president and the board, Megan Green's vision with we have to work together. And I think that there is momentum. I know that we talk about the She&A, and it's the first time we've had an all-women group of people in that position. But I think that there is a moment here to work together, and I think what we've seen in the past in city politics is that we fight each other a lot, and I think that this is a moment where, we don't have to fix those big problems that you talk about, public safety, roads, things that connect even from the city to the county. We have to work together. Less confrontation, more collaboration is I think how President Green put it. Daniela Velazquez, thank you for joining us, and thank you to our guests, Cara Spencer and Jay Ashcroft, this week as well. We're going to have to leave it there for now, but next week we're going to have a full review of that first round of voting, the primary in the municipal elections, as the Aldergeddon is underway, as they've been calling it. Until then, we're off the record.